Hi everybody, how's it going? I'm just after finishing my bike, so I thought I'd take a couple of minutes here to run through a few things that mightn't be too obvious from looking at my blog, or describe a few things that I may have missed. So we'll start at the front of the bike and we'll work our way back. As you can see, the suspension on the front is upside down, and I did that on purpose, just mainly for aesthetics. I just felt that if I had it the other way, the bike, it just wouldn't have looked, it just would have looked very slender and very skinny towards the front. I think the way the suspension is now, it kind of makes the bike a bit more even and more balanced from front to back. When I was designing the suspension on the front, I had the Fibonacci ratio in mind. So the dimension from the top bracket to the bottom bracket here is 43 millimeters. From the bottom bracket down to the top bushing here is 69.5 millimeters, and then from bushing to bushing down here, the external measurement is 112.5 millimeters. It's a standard mini motor wheel in the front, just with the valve cut off, and it's been filled with Isopon, flush and spray painted. The bushings, I had to make myself. The two brackets are from mini moto, so I had to there was no magic involved really. I just took the measurements and just made them on the lathe to suit. The handlebars are held in place with these end cap nuts that I sprayed black with a fleck of red through it, just like everything else on the bike. Everything that's been sprayed has been sprayed the same colour. I'll speak a little bit more about that later on. Yeah, there's a bit of threaded bar holding them in place. That was mitered and put up inside this pipe here, and then welded from the top down before I attached the handlebar itself. So there's no weld visible, and as you can see, the handlebar sits nice and flush on the yoke. So it turned out okay. The handlebars themselves are just made from brass. Again, there's no real magic there, just had a design in mind and just made them up in the lathe. They're a close tolerance fit, they'll come off. A little bit of persuasion and then they'll push back on again. Probably shouldn't have attempted to do that with one hand, either way. Yeah, all the washers and bushings are also made in the lathe, all brass, just to keep the colour scheme pretty similar. The frame is made from the stock 16mm tubular pipe, the gun barrel that we were given in the workshop. To get this curve on the back here, it runs around the back wheel. I used an old gas drum. It was the only thing I could find that had the diameter I needed. So I just emptied out an old butane bottle, welded a lug onto it, and just used it to form all my pipes using oxyacetylene, just to make it a bit easier. The hardest part was negotiating where the curve should increase, because obviously if you look at it from the side it looks like one radius the whole way around, but because it's bent here and it falls back in, these are actually two different circumferences. The circles they're part of are two different circumferences, so that took a bit of figuring out, but it worked out okay in the end. The engine, just a standard mini moto engine, just a few modifications. There's like an oil breather put on the back here. You can check out the blog and see how that's held in place just using a socket cap screw. There's an inline filter on the front here. I made a mock exhaust out of some chrome pipes I had at home, and I just thought it was too much for the bike. It didn't look right. I think it was just overcomplicating things. So I just wanted to fill that hole with something simple. So that did the trick. I took the spark plug out and just put a large socket cap screw in there, which I painted black with a red fleck through it again, just like everything else. And any of the holes I filled with socket cap screws. On the side here I put an Italian euro coin where the sprocket used to be. I just took the casing off, I cut the sprocket out, and I glued this in place. I chose to put this coin in here because the front of the bike was designed on the Fibonacci ratio, and this is the Vitruvian Man, which is a painting by Leonardo da Vinci, and the proportions of this are in the proportions of the Fibonacci ratio. So I just thought it was a pretty cool link. Around the other side, originally I had intended to take the side casings off both sides and put perspex on both sides so you could see straight through and see the crank and the piston, the bottom end. But unfortunately when I got everything off, it was a sealed unit and you couldn't see through, so I just decided that I'd cut out any protruding metal and fill it back up with Isopon and spray it and put a knuckle duster in there, just as like a little mini display cabinet. And the reason I use a knuckle duster is because it's kind of the universal symbol for choppers and street fighter bikes, so I just thought it was a nice little touch. Originally I'd done this etching of another one of Leonardo da Vinci's paintings. I think you'll recognise it, the Mona Lisa, and I was going to put that in there, but I just felt it was a bit too much, so I decided I'd leave it out and put the brass knuckles in there. And the brass kind of tied in with everything else on the bike as well. Like, as you can see, there's brass foot pegs here, and the handlebars are brass, and all these little bungs here on the back, they're all brass. So I just thought it was a lot better to keep it simple, not overcomplicate things. The foot pegs on the back, the same as the handlebars really, they were just done in the lathe, and I drilled a hole in them and put a bit of threaded bar in, and then drilled and tapped a hole into the frame, so they just screw into place. The grinders do the job fine. The tank was made from 1mm galvanise. See, the theme of my bike originally was developments and skulls. I wanted to make a skull from a development, and yeah, it turned out okay. It took a bit of planning, but in the end it worked out pretty well. I think altogether I've probably got about 20 hours invested into the tank, between planning and cutting out and making, and of course like the finishing details, like the eyebrows and the nose, like they're all, like the nose was there. I formed the nose out of the sheet metal, but to get the little bridge and things in there I had to weld in from behind and fill it out with weld, so I could cut into it with the grinder just to get that little bump and the bridge there. And same with the eyebrows and the lips and things, they're all just built up with MIG and ground back down again. And move back from that, we have the seat. Again, we have a little brass component here, just made up in the lathe. The seat just pops off there, a little hole in the seat where it sits on the brass bung. And the same as everything else, or same as the foot pegs at least, it's just a little bit of threaded bar. Right there. Just hold it onto the frame. It's just one of those things, just simple but effective. Goes back on. Here you go. Again, just like everything else that's been sprayed in the bike, the seat's black with a red kind of fleck through it. There was a bit more red in the seat because I wanted to give it a bit of texture. I wanted it to look kind of leathery. I tried a few different things. I tried putting different things onto the surface afterwards, painted and tights and plaster, scrim tape and different things like that, and it was just a bit too much, so I just decided to sand it all back down and just go for a nice simple approach to it. And it worked out okay. Doesn't look too bad. The back of the bike then is hubless. There's no hub. I took a bit of working out. You can see in the blog how I got all my measurements. Probably took about 3 hours of measuring before I cut anything. I cut out these two rims. There's one here and there's one on the other side as well, obviously. And I cut the two of them out on the CNC mill inside in the workshop with Seamus's help. And the bearings on the inside. Again, it's just a mini motor wheel, just like the front. But the rim's been cut out, or the spokes have been cut out and filed down. And it's been sprayed. The bearings are out of a skateboard. There's two on each. There's two on each lug. Now the inside one is only a spacer. The outside one is the only. See, the rim on the inside here is sloped. So this is actually the only bearing that's in contact. This one's only a spacer, but like it was the perfect size, so I didn't see the point in going away and making up spacers when I had something already at hand. Just felt it was a bit of a waste of time. Everything, again, like a lot of other parts of the bike, everything's held on with socket cap screws just to keep things consistent throughout the bike. The one problem I had when fitting this was originally I had nylon or nylock nuts holding these socket cap screws in place, but they were in contact with this little roundy bit of the rim and they were scratching it. So the only thing I could do to really overcome that was make my own nuts. So what I did was I got wing nuts and I cut the wings off them, and they had a nice roundy profile. So it's after giving me a mil or two of clearance, so I can spin the wheel and not worry about scratching the paint or anything like that. And then here, as you can probably see there, the depth of the head of this socket cap screw is a bit more than this one, and that's because I actually had to machine these down a bit to give me an extra few mil, because these had to go through both the pipe, the plastic rim, the washers and the bearings, so there wasn't quite enough thread exposed to get the nut to sit on it, so I had to put these into the lathe and machine a bit off them. So it didn't take too long. Once I figured out what I was going to do, it was fine. I'm pretty happy with the way the wheel came out. There's absolutely zero play in it. There's no wobble, there's no shake. It sits nicely and spins true. No wobble out of it at all. So it's pretty good. It came out okay. Underneath the bike then, it's just a stand. It was pretty easy to make. There was just a square of checker plate aluminium, and I used a hole saw to cut a circle out of each corner just to make the shape of the chopper cross. And then this is just 16mm black nylon that I notched out on the mill, just threaded and tapped the bottom of it and sat it into place then and held it with a screw. So, and then I just got a coat of paint. Now, unlike everything else that was sprayed, that's just black because I didn't want it to really be seen or to stand out, so I just sprayed that a flat black. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. That's pretty much everything. Yeah, so there we go. Lovely. Thank you very much, and see you later.